Welcome, Theresa Robertson. We really appreciate you joining us today all the way from Missouri. We'd like for you to share out a little bit for our listeners about who you are and how you got involved in space.
Great. Well, I am outside Kansas City, Missouri. I am a 6th and 7th grade project Lead the Way teacher, which is a STEM program. And this program is basically I get to teach a course called Flight and Space to 6th graders, which is amazing. And then I get to teach design and modeling to 7th graders, which is an engineering course. I kind of got involved in space education when I was in Austin, Texas. I taught in 5th grade. I taught in the elementary school there, and I had Bob Crippen's granddaughter in my class. So he is the first man to land the space shuttle, and he's first pilot of it. And so I literally was sitting at a parent conference, and his granddaughter is in my class, and her dad says, hey, I could bring like a space shuttle tile if you want. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah.
And then we took our 5th graders that year from Austin all the way to Houston Space Center for our field trips, for an extended day field trip. And then it was like, from there, I'm in, sign me up.
Oh my gosh, isn't Bob Crippen like one of your favorite astronauts? I'm pretty sure.
When you talk about a small world, Bob Crippen lives about 3 miles from us. And
oh, really?
We had our student, our satellite team, we had our annual banquet one year, and we picked him up in a limo and brought him, and he spoke at our banquat, and he had his stories are so cool.
Yes. I never was able to get him to come to my class because he was in Houston. But at the time, but it was crazy.
So I'll only tell a 30-second story. Bob Crippen said first time he was going to space, they're on the shuttle, had never flown before, right, with people.
Right.
Sitting in the seat next to him is John Young, who was Gemini, Apollo, walked on the moon. And they were looking at the heart rate, and they said John Young was like 50 beats a minute and Crippen was like 130. And they were laughing about how cool John Young was on this experimental space shuttle, and how Crippen was, just losing his heart rate was just tachycardic. But anyway, it's fantastic that space is so big, and yet the world of people in space is so small,
right?
That we have this connection.
Yeah. And how do you want to pause this and make me go take care of my dog? Is he still can you hear him that well?
It's not bothering us at all. Right. It's up to you.
Anyways.
No worries. Like I said, half the time my cat's meowing in the background to get in. But I want to talk a little bit about elementary and middle school education. Obviously we work with students in middle school and high school. And we recognize that the younger the kid is, really the more excited they still are about learning. Is that one of the ways that you're able to teach such high level material to such young kids?
I am blessed in the sense that my students come to me eager. And they come to me so excited they want the stories, like the story you just told about Bob Crippen. They want those stories, and that engages them. And then once you engage them at the beginning of the lesson with a story or something current event, the craziness going on with Artemis right now, and the excitement of all of that, they are engaged. And then it's so easy to teach the science of flight. And it's so easy to teach the science behind rocketry and drones and stuff, because they have the story attached to it. And so I think with the space program and little kids, I think in the elementary and middle school, middle school kids can be really snarky, and I'm too cool for school. But my kids come in and they're like, okay, what are we doing today? And then at the end of every single class, I'm like, okay, time to pack up. And they go, oh my gosh, already? And I'm like, okay, I win.
Yeah.
This past fall, we had recently this year, we had 2 really great things. I teach Earth space to 6th graders. The DART mission, the asteroid redirect, we got a lot of mileage out of that. It was such great content. And SLS, right? Those are 2 huge things that we could talk about in class. So I agree with you.
Well, I love the idea of bringing in, especially whatever your content area is, but especially true in science, to bring in the current events of what's going on, so that they, parents have the news on at night and they're able to oh yeah, I just learned about that. It really kind of gives them the chance to feel like they're part of something bigger.
Yeah. And I'm a huge proponent of bring in as many people to talk to your kids as possible that are in the industry. So when I first started kind of really getting into the space science, Michelle Monk is one of the, do you know her?
I feel like, where did we know this name from? Either it was from one of the things we did with the Miss Lears, or I feel like, was she part of the teacher liaisons at some point? I feel
No,
like.
she is a Langley engineer, and she's project manager. She was in charge of entry, descent, and landing for Mars. And
Maybe I don't know.
all you've got to do is ask your students who they know, because her goddaughter was in a class I was subbing for. And I was like, wait, hold on, who do you know? And so she Skyped with my classes all day long, once a year, every year for a long time. And then here in Kansas City, we have Alicia Cianciolo, and she is working on the Artemis missions. And so she will actually come to my school and talk to the kids about Artemis and all of those missions. So just getting as many people. I've Skyped with a SpaceX engineer because her parents live in my community. And so as soon as I put it out there that, hey, anybody I have a lot of parents that are military, and they are former helicopter pilots. So they'll talk drones and helicopters. And so it's just one of those where if you just outreach to the community, quick email, it takes me 2 seconds, and I send an email. Hey, if you have anybody that, really think we should talk to, this is what the class is about. And I get 10 replies. My sister works for NASA. My brother-in-law is in charge of a drone company that is unmanned drones, and he wouldn't let me record his session because there's some secret stuff.
Yeah, secret stuff. Yeah.
But I think that that's the other hook, line, and sinker for the kids, because it just it's so real and authentic when you're talking to the people that are doing the mission. So I do a lot of Skype sessions and a lot of how many people can I get into the class in the room in front of them.
Does your curriculum, I'm a little bit familiar with Project Lead the Way. I actually approached some one time about, could the content we do with our CubeSats, is there a place there? But do you have any freedom, like you mentioned the current events, do you have any freedom, for instance, to enter competitions? Or what is the outlet that's not the curriculum that you find most productive with your kids?
What's really funny is, we have the curriculum, we paid for it, we bought it, I've been trained in it. And then I'm so fortunate that my admin, I can just massage it like crazy, and I can change what I want to change. Some of it is, I feel, not necessarily what my 6th graders want at the time, or there's something way more exciting happening, like with Artemis. Like, I'm going to teach Artemis. That's not in the curriculum because it wasn't happening at the time they wrote the curriculum. So I'm lucky because I can adjust. We are trying to get into more competitions. I have a partner STEM teacher. She does the 7th and 8th grade, like app creators and innovators and makers with a lot of robotics and coding. And so we're trying to team up and see if we can get our kids entered into some more competition type things, but it would be very new for our district. But I think the Project Lead the Way curriculum is an amazing base. And I think it's great for teachers who aren't as nerdy as me. And just like, I'm going to, next month, I'm going to Houston for SEEK, which is the conference there. I go every year. And so I like to go get stuff that's current and there, and what are you doing in your classroom? And I'm going to steal it and use it in my classroom. And like this year, drones was an option in the curriculum for flight in space. And then this year's the first time I've ever implemented drones. But most of it was based on my relationships with and collaborations with people with the Air and Space Museum Teacher Innovator Institute that I'm in. And they started with the drones and talked to us about drones. And then I was like, okay, I got to do these drone things. So
we've mentioned a few of these extracurricular programs that you're kind of part of in even organizations. I know, like teacher liaisons as well, space ambassadors. How do you find being members in some of these or participating in these outside organizations is adding to what you're able to do in the classroom or for you professionally?
Oh my goodness, it changed my life. It totally changed my career. It changed me professionally and personally. I joined the Air and Space Museum Teacher Innovator Institute in 2019 on a complete fluke. I have a friend who's a librarian, and she gets all of the national conferences and join this. And she said, here's a STEM one about space, Theresa, I think you might be into. My students and I made a video in 2 days to apply for it. And then it is the collaboration and the amount of information that is out there from other teachers that you get hooked up with is
It's really about finding some like-minded zealots, isn't it? You find
Yes.
people that are even nuttier than you are, and you're like,
Yes.
yeah, let's run together.
Yeah. You find your tribe.
This is great. I'm going to introduce you to another cohort you may become a part of called Limitless Space Institute.
Okay, I've been reading about that one because that's coming out. Yes.
So I'm in the first cohort. I'm actually going to Seeks for the first time with that cohort here. So I will introduce you to the folks that run it, Casey Hines and Sonny. I think his name is Sonny. He's the astrophysicist.
Yeah, because we podcasted with both of them. Actually,
my sixth grade class, I was looking at the quiz I gave them or some notes, and it's like I'm literally asking them to talk about the Alcubierre warp drive. You know, It's like we're bringing Star Trek to the classroom. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to maybe talking to you in person in Houston next.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
And I
That's
think
funny that you brought the warp drive because I used to, when I taught earth science, because I did that for 15 years before I switched to STEM. I did they had to do the geology of the planets in Star Wars. And so it was, instead of the geology of Earth, because we already studied all that, now apply all of this to the planets in Star Wars.
That's great.
Right.
That's really fun, right? Because I mean, obviously it brings something that is to them, like from a media aspect, it's not school.
Right.
Anything we can do to get their attention as well. So when you are these organizations, right, a lot of times the teachers who maybe are listening to us, or they always just think that they might be trained not necessarily in space because they might have a generalized degree. Did you just always have a passion for space, or was it something that you fell into because like maybe the librarian gave you this connection, or how did you kind of pivot to with such a focus on something?
Well, it's kind of funny because so I'm a military brat. My dad is an Air Force pilot. So I've gone to every air show possible. He was the commander of the West Coast. And so I was at all of the big, like meet the Thunderbird pilots and meet the Blue Angels that are coming through. And so it's kind of always into planes. Never wanted to fly. And shockingly, I hate to fly. Like, I think it's just a control issue. But when that started, and then I think it's because I'm not going to lie. I think it really was that Bob Crippen moment, like something about I can bring people in to the classroom, because back when you're teaching earth science, you might meet a geologist or a paleontologist and the kids will be excited to look at dinosaur bones. But when you're talking about like just super active and things changing constantly, that's space and that's space exploration. And so I think that's kind of really where I started. And then getting into these groups, I had no idea that 2-week-long professional development in Washington, D.C. existed.
Right. When we talk about PD.
And that somebody would pay for me to go do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, where has this been my whole life? I mean, really, I'm 51. I've been teaching a really long time and I've been in education a really long time. And I didn't go until 2019. And I'm like, where was this my whole like earlier career? I encourage teachers need to just jump in, because there's so many things available for you that are free and and the collaboration and the people you meet. Like I have some of my best friends and people who have changed me personally, not just but I got rejuvenated starting all that. You hit a point in your career where you're like, oh my gosh, if I have to look at another middle schooler today.
Right.
And so
I don't like grading. I'm going to be honest. I don't like grading.
Yeah. So switching career topics within my school, like just kind of switching from earth science to STEM. I am like brand new. I'm going to make it to retirement and maybe I won't even retire. I'm so excited about what I do.
Now. When you love what you do, so many teachers can't relate to that, right? Just because they don't have the freedoms or maybe the administrators to might support. But I think it really comes down to having that passion with being able to share what you love.
Right.
And you can take your passion into any content you teach. And that's the thing I think people forget. Like, yes, you're stuck to standards and yes, they have a test to complete, but there's nothing that says you can't engage them quickly with something that is related. You can relate so much to your content. And so that's the thing I think is unfortunate, that I feel like teachers sometimes are in a rut because I'm stuck with these standards. I can't do drones. I'm like, I could do drones with you in geometry right now. Like, let's talk. So you know.
You mentioned about the having students meet people that do real work. I think one of the things that Sean and I really like the most is making the most authentic experiences. Let's not talk about engineering. Let's go work with real engineers on real projects. One of the things that I found that really works for like middle school, because I think the high school kids are the more snarky or sarcastic ones, than the middle school are blue sky, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's cool. I like to go visit universities and let them meet undergraduates, because the undergraduates are so close to the age of the students. They're cool, right? Old people, the whiteheads like me, we can only be so cool. But a 20-year-old who's excited about whatever field, I find that has been, I think it's pretty impactful with the kids.
Yeah, I just wrote that down.
Yeah, no, seriously, and they're cheap, right? They don't cost you a lot. They can come visit. How are you close to St. Louis University? I'm not clear. So that's okay.
That's the other side of Missouri.
Yeah, well, Kansas City's got to have some universities around there, right? So
we definitely do.
Those are outstanding, resources, I think, are undergrads, because they like what they're doing, or they wouldn't be in that field, more or less.
And I'm lucky because we have NCC, which is like a Northland Career Center attached to our high school. So the kids who are in high school get to do on the job training, basically. And so they get to do culinary arts, and they get to do all of this stuff that is related to careers. And we have an aviation wing. And so I get those high school kids will come down into the middle school and fly drones with us, and they'll let us watch them fly the drones. And they'll fix my drones when they break, which is even better. But it's great to have that, even just with the high school kids, have that kind of relationship.
Modeling and mentoring are great ways to keep the pipeline filled.
People, I think teachers feel overwhelmed with that idea. Like, they are like, what do you mean you're talking to NCC? What do you mean you're going to go over there? And I'm like, yeah, we're just going to walk across the street. And I feel like people think it can't happen. And they just have to ask. Like, you just have to ask.
Let's be honest. Even educators, a lot of them have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Your little life story you shared, that's a growth mindset. You keep extending your boundaries, and that probably speaks to your satisfaction with your work right now.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and I'm a little bit ADD, and I get bored quite easily.
I hear you.
If I'm bored in my own classroom, my kids must be completely dying in there. So,
I want to pivot to something you mentioned, the idea, like, just ask and just reach out and find it, because that you can find something that you love and then share that out, is what you were saying about educators. Well, for me, because, I'm not a science teacher at all. I had no background. I'm an English teacher, debate coach, right? And I started working with Kevin when he was building these CubeSats, and we kind of had these shared kids. So I thought, how can I get involved? Well, it turns out my debate kids could do policy work related to aerospace. And it took me a while. It was really a trip that we took to MIT with the kids,
right,
where I realized that any career path can be placed in an industry. So even though you're thinking space, I don't want to be an astronaut or an engineer, there are an incredibly large number of opportunities related to something, whatever you do want to do. So you want to be a lawyer, space law.
Right.
We have
go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a young lady who's a high school. She's really an artist, but she writes children's books now on space, and we help her get them published. And it's still space, right? It's still STEM, even though she's an artist.
I have my high school kids who my first group of sixth graders that I did earth science with in this district are now juniors. And I have a couple that will email me, and they're like, hey, isn't there an internship at NASA? Like, I'm still really interested in all that stuff you talked to me about in sixth grade. And I'm like, yeah, let me hook you up. It's really easy to find.
And those are the kids you bring back to your classroom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that I just want educators to realize, like, you just have to ask. Like, there's so much out there for you. And sometimes it's hard to whittle through how much is out there. And just find what's going to keep you going. And if it's not even part of your content, it's okay. Like, if you feel you can turn it into your content. And so I think that's what my focus is going to be coming up. When I come back from SEEK, the district has asked me to kind of do some PD on how do we get these kinds of things in STEM things and STEAM, because I'm all about the arts, how do we get them incorporated in regular content areas so that kids will be more engaged in that as well?
So
We'll see.
fantastic. I'm going to ask you a little later on about SEEKs, but I want to let you know that we organized our first conference at Kennedy Space Center for educators and students, and it was free, but we had an art contest, for the younger kids, and we had a 3D printer design competition to 3D design a new logo for our conference. So I totally agree with you. Let me ask, can you share a little bit, since you've been often, what is SEEKs like, and would you recommend it to anyone who's listening to our podcast who happen to be educators?
Yeah. SEEK is, 3 days of sessions. And so you just pick what classes you want to go to. And it is everything from, obviously it all has a space background, but there are so many contents hit in it. And the classes are taught by other educators. And so your session is just another classroom teacher who already tried this in the class and it worked and it was great. Or it becomes kind of a round table sometimes in your session, like, hey, I know how I would do this with my second graders. And then I know how I would do this with my eighth graders. And so it's just this amazing collaboration. Sometimes you also get exposed to, like, you get to go tour. I went to, last year was my favorite one. You get to scuba dive and train like an astronaut if you sign up for the dive. And I've done that one and I was terrible at it. But I did come back and tell all my students now I'm trained like an astronaut. And then you get to go to like the neutral buoyancy lab where they have the International Space Station in the pool. And we happened to be there last year. We were there and the astronauts were in there training. And so we could listen to what they were talking about. One of the scuba tech, so they have scuba divers with them for safety reasons. Each astronaut gets 2 scuba divers while they're in the water. And one of those ladies I reached out to her on Facebook. I had a student, a 6th grader who's trained certified scuba. And I said, dude, you could go like be a scuba diver for NASA and help astronauts train. And he was like, really? And we started an email thread with her, getting information about it and stuff. So just the amount of, you get great lessons. Yes, you get packets to take home. Yes, you get stickers and free stuff because we all like a good swag bag. But the amount that you see and the things you can connect to and how you can connect your kids to other people in the industry, and you get connected to people. I got connected to people who know so much more about how to teach space than me. And I just take their ideas.
No, there's nothing new under the sun, right? The goal is find everyone that's cooler than you.
Yeah.
And liberally use all of your cool stuff.
That's what I do.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Would you agree that the secret to really being successful in the classroom is you have to only teach what you're really passionate about? It's what you have that, it seems like you have a strong passion in this area, which, by the way, I'm aligned with you in that. Don't you think that if you're not, as an educator, really just excited about the topic, it's hard to convey that to students, right?
I think too, I think we were taught a certain way to teach also for a very long time. Like, I'm going to show you how to do it, and then you're going to practice it, and then we're going to practice it together, and all this, like the model plan, right? And I find that is the most stagnant way to teach kids. Like, I think everything should be taught discovery. And so I think you can flip your math class around. If you quit teaching it, here's the objective, here's this, practice. And you make them figure it out for themselves. Like, hey, I want you to look at that. Like, I did Bernoulli's principle yesterday with 6th graders, and all I did was blow on paper, and then we blew a tent down, and then we had the balloons and blew the space. And I said, what do you guys think this is? So it's all discovery based. And they came up with it. And then I went, oh, guess what? It has a name. And I wrote it on the board. But I think that they were so engaged. I had 28 in there, and they were completely like, wait, what's she going to do next? And I think you can teach any topic that way. So whether or not, like, maybe you're teaching math right now and it's not your favorite subject, but you can turn it into something way more engaging for you and the students if you just flip it on them and make them figure it all out. I went to a really great PD. Oh my gosh. I bet it was 15, 18 years ago. And the guy said, you should only teach in questions.
Why does this? What's going on? Why does this
never
happen?
teach in statements. You should only teach in questions. And he taught the whole PD using only questions. And it was kind of life-changing for me because we tend to go, hey, here's the formula for volume, length times width times height. And instead, throw it up on the board and go, what is this? Well, what do you guys think this is? Well, what do you think this is? And I swear in 5 minutes, they will tell you the formula for volume. And then you relate.
It sounds like it's very engaging, right? It
Yeah.
maximizes student engagement and focus.
Right. So anytime like I get evaluated by my staff, my admin, I have to remind them, like, I want you to remember that I don't go, I do, you do, we do. I don't do that. That's not my niche. I said, so remember, it's going to be completely me stepping back, facilitator. They are going to figure it out. And then I'm just going to commend them. Hey, you figured it out. Here's what it's called.
You know, that's a good point. We got to hope that while we're learning as educators that we have to change our delivery. I wonder if admin understands that maybe we need to change that little checkbox that they have about whether we're hitting the whatever those standards are for the day on the board and all that.
I think there's definitely a place for it. Like, I do think that there are kids and kids with certain needs and stuff that do probably need it more structured. And so I try to, check in with them a little bit more because I'm so not structured that way. But I think that, I think it's just even if you did it once a week or you did it twice a week, it's just a different way I think it just illuminates the classroom, and it makes everybody involved because they have now something to figure out.
Right. I totally agree. Yesterday, I put up a chemistry problem and I do this one. Tell me the most common mistakes that students will make in solving this problem. And they will, it's amazing how they'll get really insightful when they have to think about
somebody else's mistakes.
Right. They're not thinking about their own mistake. They're not thinking it's them. They're thinking about, but they were spot on too. They can quickly identify all the most likely ways that you would mess it up. And that's sort of a backwards way of helping them reinforce how to do it the right way.
I was thinking about your Bernoulli's principle one where you blow on the balloon. He does a similar one where with the kids to try to figure out like which way it's going to go based on how this balloon thing that he shows up. Anyway, I know we're short on time and I will be respectful of that. But as we part today, you've given us some great advice today. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners who might be reluctant to step outside of the confines of the curriculum and to maybe inspire them to become passionate again?
I think that go find that one teacher on your campus who already does it. Like every campus has the teacher that, people are like, oh my gosh, there she goes again. That would be me. And just go talk to them and get advice, go observe, go watch their class. We have class visits that we do every quarter where they'll cover our classes so we can go watch other people. And now my house alarm is going off. I don't know what's happening in this house today.
We don't hear it.
We don't even hear it. So,
but
it's a good question to ask. Why? Why today?
Why is your alarm going off?
What is happening?
Why is your alarm going off?
Yes, there's another question. What I think that go visit other teachers and if you're doing a really good job at it, let people come watch you. My classroom is always open. I am like, hey, I'll tell you if we're not doing anything exciting today. I'll be like, you might not want to come today, but come watch because they are shocked. I had a whole team of teachers come in and my kids were working on a project for engineering and they went, you have 24 kids in here and my room is not big. It's just big high top tables and they're all on the floor with utility knives, 7th graders. And they're totally working. And I was like, great, because it's established and they want to do this. They're making this for a certain person. There's a purpose. And so I think if they get out of your room, get into other people's rooms, have conversations with other people, because you can be, refueled and it's exciting.
Well, we really appreciate you spending this time with us. And I know that we'll talk with you more, especially about this upcoming conference you guys are going to be at.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.